Hello everyone, I have a driver's license now, so here is a video giving the government a reason to take it away. I want you to picture this. It's 2012, and the racing game genre has just reached its peak. Yeah, I said it. And I'm aware that people are going to hate me for this, but yes, this is it. This is the racing game. Trust me, it surprises even me that a reboot of a grungy game of the same name almost a decade before it has continued to be the best and most satisfying racer I've ever played. And I can't even blame my love for this game on nostalgia because I hadn't played it until 2020. Now listen, I'm not here to throw shade at the other games or people who think that the original black box era was better, but I just can't undersell how much I love this game, especially compared to the newer games. It's a soft reboot of the 2005 game developed by EA Black Box, the creator of most of the early Need for Speed games. They were soon replaced by Criterion, known for their work on the Burnout games, who then released Hot Pursuit and, 2 years later, Most Wanted 2012. And fans were expecting a sequel, but what they got was something more similar to Criterion's last Burnout game than the original Most Wanted. I never played the original, but from what I've seen, it seems like a vastly different game with a completely different vibe. However, the 2012 version still had really good reception and ended up being the 7th best-selling game that year, with 500,000 physical copies sold, not including digital downloads or PC sales. The game opens with a cutscene overviewing the fictional city of Fairhaven. Butterflies and Hurricanes by Muse playing in the background as you're shown both the city and the industrial and wooded areas surrounding it. Fairhaven being home to the best street racing in the world, with 10 drivers hiding around the city. The best of the best, always on the run, waiting to put little punks like us in our place. But little do they know, their end just entered the city in an Aston Martin, and that new threat is you. And from there, you're thrown into the world. It isn't much on the story side, but it runs everything that you need to know and throws you right into a race. Now, those who have watched me before know that I'm not super picky with stories in game. As for me, good gameplay will always far outweigh a bad, or in this case, non-existent story, whereas a good story will never really make up for bad gameplay. One of the major criticisms of this game was this. The original Most Wanted made it more than just being the best. It also wrapped you up in a revenge plot. But here, that's just not present, and honestly, I'm completely fine with that. It's a no-nonsense racing game that gets right to the point. It knows what it is, and I can respect that, especially since what there is here is untouchable. With no real story, there's also no real characters, which the original had. The main antagonist of that game, Razor. His real name was Clarence, by the way. Not important here, I just thought it was funny when I found out. But on a real note, I never understood why we had character customization in a racing game. Like, high car modification I get, but these are racing games. I don't care what my specific human looks like. It always felt like bloat to me. I mean, I think it's cool that it's in Unbound and such, but it still always felt completely unnecessary to me. Customization as a whole, at least visual, has been largely removed from Most Wanted. Instead, the most that you get is random color swaps from gas stations, which I'm completely okay with. The way that the game is structured and presented perfectly weaves away the need for heavy customization. Though I am not blind to the fact that it was likely due to EA crunching for time and left features out. Do I condone it? No. But am I willing to look past it? For this game, yes. It would, of course, have been cool to have, and I would have eaten it up, but honestly, it makes sense thematically. You're a street racer, you're a criminal, you don't want to stick out. Your goal isn't to be the flashiest, you're just trying to be the best, to be the most wanted driver. Another thing that's absent here are garages and safe houses in general, and I absolutely love what's in its place. To go with the theme of always being on the run, you don't have a base of operations. Instead, you change cars by finding them out in the world and just taking them. Jack spots is what the game calls them, and I, to this day, don't know why this has not come back. You have access to most cars in the game since they aren't gated behind some wall. You can just take them. It's literally a carjacking. And this doesn't even hurt the progression either, because races are car specific and 90% of the cars are supercars, and every single one of them handles beautifully. Listen, I've played a lot of racing games, Kart Racers, simulations, Simcade, Arcade, all of them, but this one nails that perfect in-between. I can tell you that I wouldn't care nearly as much about this game if it wasn't for the feel of it all. The feel is perfect. It feels fast, it feels weighty, drifting feels great and takes a while to master on different cars. All this while having this constant feel of speed. This game single-handedly ruined other racing games for me, because even though some of them might be objectively faster, very few feel that way. It has a very special fluidness to its controls and movements, and I can't help but feel that I might be in the minority here, as whatever they did here didn't get done again, so people must have had some problem with it. But with that, it also means that this game as a whole has a very, very specific feel to it. And when it comes to racing games, feel is the most important thing to get right. And here, it's absolutely perfect. The cars themselves show this too, and there are some really iconic cars here. The Shelby Cobra 427, the Chevrolet Corvette ZR1, and that's just a few of them. Plus, there are some pretty cool picks for the DLC packs too. The Movie Legends pack having the Aston Martin showcased in many of the James Bond films, and the Pontiac Firebird from Smokey and the Bandit. In terms of cars, this game just has everything you'd want, from mom vans to midlife crises. Hell, you can even roleplay as Andrew Tate.
Well, what color's your brigade? Pizza time.
Honestly, there's just a massive selection here. All of them have unique feel to them, not to mention how they sound, and they all just play very nicely. The races are made around that car's speed, which means that there are still a reason to race with the objectively slower cars. Even then, not many of them actually feel slow. But hands down, the best car here is the Caterham Superlight R500. This car right here might be the sole reason why I enjoy this game as much as I do. I mean, yeah, it's great. All of it feels good, but this one specific car perfectly encapsulates the feeling of speed that this game has. It is far from the fastest car, but the control at high speeds is unmatched and feels amazing. Now, the main attraction here are the races themselves, to which there are a lot. As I said before, races are car specific, so every car has a set of 5 activities, usually a combination of sprint and circuit races, police ambushes, and other stuff I'll go over. All of them start with cutscenes that are always very trippy, filtered pans of the city. It's all very stylized and feels so unreal and obscure, only to jump into the rolling start of races. Circuit races are your bog standard races. There's a set path and you go around it 2 to 3 times to win. Sprint races, on the other hand, are probably my favorite. They pick one non-repeating path from point A to point B and say go. These show mileage instead of laps and tend to have cops intertwined with the track. It's a lot of fun. And these races can get intense. Other racers pushing you into walls. This isn't a combat racer, but sometimes you can definitely turn it into one. The tracks also aren't static. If there's an alternate route that'll still get you to the next checkpoint, the game will let you take it. It's not a big thing, but it makes the races feel so dynamic, especially once the cops get involved, which also feels natural because it never felt like they are only trying to catch me. And with the other racers, the cops, and the civilians just doing their thing, these races as a whole can get pretty difficult, though I can't think of a point where I was tearing my hair out from it. Ambushes are exactly what they sound like, trying to escape the police within a target time. The difficulty of these largely depend on what car you're using and where you start off, since some cars can straight up just outrun the lower level cops, and if you're slower, then just maneuvering them in the inner city works too. Also, these always have the most bizarre cutscenes. Seriously, every time the cops show up, there's just some stupid, abstract, unintelligible thing happening. It's so stupid. And with that, I want to touch on the police. There are 6 heat levels. The police will hunt you down harder and with more power the higher it is. They appear in races at scripted points and in ambushes, but also they can just be roaming around in the open world. Heat level 1 and 2 are honestly laughable. They aren't super aggressive and the roadblocks can be rammed through with pretty much any car, but heat level 3 is when stuff starts to pick up. The chasers start getting more aggressive and roadblocks now become an issue since heavy vehicles now block the road. These SUVs are not ones that you're going to be able to take down anytime soon. And at heat level 4, they start sending those SUVs to chase you, and then spike traps start getting thrown out, in addition to the fact that they will now start going for head-on collisions. Heat level 5 is where it starts to become actively difficult, as now the police will start sending Corvettes into the mix. These are significantly harder to outrun and will instead get in front of you and then deploy road spikes behind them while you're on the run. And level 6 is when they start to deploy SWAT trucks. You will not ram through these and they will take you down if you get anywhere near them. Now, in races, the heat levels tend to not have the same effects, and overall they are much less aggressive, but they are usually planted in specific spots to become issues there. But in ambushes, the full force of the law is on you, and usually they don't start you in an advantageous spot. In the open world, however, you will have to actively try to get anything more than heat level 1. As most of the time, you'll already be going so fast that by the time the cops start the pursuit, you'll already be out of range and on cooldown. And there aren't that many cops scattered around anyway, especially compared to the new game Unbound. That game has like 1 in every 5 cars being a cop, and it's absurd. Now, after a race where the cops are involved, the pursuit will continue and you still need to lose them there. Now, back to the races, speedruns are a new addition to the activity list, and these are pretty fun. Like sprint races, you have to go from point A to point B, but here the goal is to keep above a certain average speed the whole time, which can get pretty hard when you're going for gold with so many turns, in addition to the cops often being added into the mix. The DLC packs added 2 more activities, the first of which being drift races, which are just having you going and drifting through cones to get a good score. Your score multiplies depending on how long the drift is and how many cones you go through. It's whatever. And lastly, smash and grab. Of all of these, this is the only one I actually dislike. You just drive around open areas trying to break signs for points. This one, I feel, doesn't actually really play to the game's strengths and feels out of place, although I will admit it often makes a good use of the more open areas of Fairhaven. And now, looking at Fairhaven as a map, it's pretty good too. There's a nice mix of inner city tight turns and open wooded highways, plus a few big open areas just for messing around. The whole map, even the inner city, feel like it was designed for high speeds, and in most cases you don't need to take your foot off the gas to not crash. And I like having a lead foot, so that checks all the boxes for me. Plus, this game just looks incredible. I mean, seriously, this was made in 2012 and it still looks like something that could have been released yesterday. I don't know what it is about racing games, but as a whole, they always just look amazing. But at the same time, I also couldn't tell you which game is which without the UI or anything because they do all look the same, which is both a blessing and a curse. Now, because every car only has a select handful of things to do, you can't exactly just pick one car and run the whole game with it. Which on one hand sucks because I just want to use my favorite car, but on the other hand, it forces you to try new things. This doesn't apply to the game's main attraction, the most wanted races. These are one-on-one sprints, and I think there's something special. On challenging any of these, you get a cutscene, which always stuck out to me as feeling so much bigger than they actually were. Every one of them turns these abstract shapes and ideas into a car in spectacular fashion, giving the cars themselves character and making them seem almost holy in a way. These are amazing, a great way to hype up your criminal opponent. And the races themselves are these grand spectacles of street racing, with relentless cops and opponents that won't let you get too far ahead. One mistake can cost you the race since they do rubber band so you can't get too far ahead, and it makes it to where you're never safe and one mistake can crush your chances of winning. And even when you do win, it's not over, because unable to drive your rival's car, you need to take them down in the open world. You'll have the best chance of doing this as soon as the race ends, but if you don't get to them, or if the cops take your attention, then you'll have to find them out in the open world and take them out of commission there. The game consists of 10 of these, with 4 extra from the DLC, but it all culminates in one last race. The race against the number 1 most wanted driver. Some highway racing, some in the more compact inner city, all while the cops are maxed out and going after you. This is honestly one of the best moments of the game, as it is essentially the game's final boss, and it fits perfectly. Now, I've already said that I don't have any nostalgia for this game, and that's the truth. But what I do have nostalgia for is the soundtrack that they picked out. For me, the early 2010s was the peak of music, and they picked the best for this. With absolute bangers like I Am Electric by Heaven's Basement, Love Someone Else by Lower Than Atlantis, The Road by Into the Ocean, and one of my favorite songs of all time, Blue Ghosts by Riverboat Gamblers. All great songs, and if I'm being honest, I think that the soundtrack for Unbound sucks. I don't want mumble rap, I want them to go back to grunge and punk rock. Now, all of what I've said was just on the single player, because one of the things that the game seemed to have boasted about on launch was that it was the most social Need for Speed game. And to my surprise, there are, in fact, still people playing the multiplayer. Now, unlike the single player, all the cars are locked behind progression, which is just leveling up. But one thing I think is cool is that it's all based on speed points, including all the points that you got in the single player. So by the time you would reasonably be going into multiplayer, you would already have about half the cars unlocked. It's honestly pretty fun. You have to drive to meetups with everyone in the lobby. There's usually a collection of challenges and races of all kinds to do. It's fun even a decade later, and surprisingly not dead. Listen, I absolutely love this game, and it's rare to me that I find something that just clicks, that really sticks, you know? And I think this is the first time that I ever even properly attempted to do a video on a subject like that. I usually struggle to do what I would consider to be justice on that subject, and here I hope I did it right. But with all that, I've been Koji, bringing to you what I consider to be the best racing game of all time, Need for Speed Most Wanted. If you enjoyed what you saw, and why wouldn't you, then like and subscribe to let me know that you like the content and to see more in the future. And if you've played the game, let me know what your experience with it was. And if you haven't, then you should go play it. And with all of that, this is the end of the video. Go away, enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next video.